The emergency klaxons screamed across Proxima Verde like wounded animals. Sarah Chen sprinted down the corridor of the colony's administrative center, her boots echoing against metal floors. Through the windows, she could see fire raining from the sky. "How many ships?" she shouted into her comm unit. 40, maybe more," replied Marcus Webb, her security chief. His voice cracked with static and fear. "Director, our defense fleet is gone. All 3 frigates. They lasted 4 minutes." Sarah reached the command center and burst through the doors. The room was chaos. Screens showed dozens of alien warships in orbit, their weapons glowing with charging energy. These were Kresh vessels. Everyone knew their reputation. The Kresh didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners who couldn't work. They simply took what they wanted. "Get everyone to the underground shelters," Sarah ordered. "All 47,000 colonists. Move, now." Her staff scattered to their tasks. Sarah dropped into her chair and pulled up the communications array. Her hands shook as she typed. The Galactic Council had to respond. Proxima Verde was a registered colony protected under Council law. They had rights. She opened a channel to the Council headquarters, 300 light-years away. "This is Colony Director Sarah Chen of Proxima Verde. We are under attack by Kresh Dominion forces, requesting immediate military assistance. We have civilians, families, children. Please respond." The reply came within minutes. A Varanthi official appeared on screen, her insectoid features unreadable. "Director Chen, we have received your distress call. The Council is convening an emergency session. However, Proxima Verde is located in disputed territory. We must follow proper protocols." "Protocols?" Sarah's voice rose. "They're burning my colony." "We will dispatch observer ships immediately. They will arrive in 6 standard days. The Council will vote on intervention." 6 days? We'll all be dead or enslaved in 6 days. The Varanthi's antenna drooped. "I am sorry, Director. I will advocate for faster action. Please hold your position." The screen went dark. Sarah stared at the blank display. 6 days. She looked at the tactical screen. The Kresh ships were moving into bombardment formation. They had hours, not days. Her grandfather's face flashed in her mind. Zhang Chen, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He had told her stories when she was young. Stories about the old days before humanity joined the peaceful galaxy. Stories about war. "Find me the old Earth military emergency channel," she told her communications officer. The young man looked confused. "Ma'am? That channel hasn't been used since the peace era began. That's 73 years ago." "Find it, anyway." It took 3 minutes of searching through archived protocols. The channel code appeared on her screen, ancient and dust-covered in the digital sense. Sarah had no idea if anyone even monitored it anymore. Humanity had put away its weapons when it joined the galactic community. The Council species said war was primitive, barbaric. Humans had agreed, ashamed of their violent history. But her grandfather had once told her something else, late at night, when he'd had too much whiskey. "We didn't forget how to fight, Sarah. We just chose not to. There's a difference." Sarah activated the old military channel. She cleared her throat and began broadcasting. "This is Colony Director Sarah Chen of Proxima Verde. Human Colony, Sector 7. We are under attack. Kresh Dominion forces, approximately 40 warships. Our defense fleet is destroyed. Civilian population of 47,000 is in immediate danger. We need help. If anyone is listening on this channel, we need help now." She set the message to repeat automatically. It was probably useless. Probably no one monitored those old frequencies anymore. But she had to try everything. The first impacts hit the northern continent 10 minutes later. The Kresh were targeting infrastructure, power plants, and communication arrays. They wanted the colony intact enough to be useful, but broken enough to surrender quickly. Sarah watched the screens as evacuation reports flowed in. 70% of colonists were in shelters. 80%. The numbers climbed while buildings exploded on the surface. "Director, "We're getting a strange reading," our sensor operator called out. "Strange how?" "From Sol system. Something just activated near Neptune. Multiple somethings. Big gravitational distortions." Sarah's heart jumped. "What kind of distortions?" "I don't know. The pattern is old. Really old. Let me check the archives." The operator's fingers flew across his console. "Ma'am, this matches the signature of slipstream drives, but we haven't used slipstream technology since before we joined the Council. It's too energy intensive, too dangerous." "How many signatures?" "3, and they're massive. Each one is reading as large as a small moon." Sarah felt something stir in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or maybe just desperation making her imagine things. "Can you identify them?" "Negative. They just vanished from sensors. If they entered slipstream, they could be going anywhere." The bombardment intensified. Another power plant died in a ball of plasma. Sarah watched the casualty reports starting to come in. 50 dead. 100. The shelters would protect most people, but not everyone had made it underground in time. She thought about her daughter, safe on Earth, attending university. She thought about the families huddled in the dark below her feet, listening to the world end above them. She thought about her grandfather's stories. Hours crawled past. The Kresh were methodical, almost lazy in their destruction. They'd done this before to other colonies, other species. To them, this was just another Tuesday. Sarah kept broadcasting on every channel she had. The Council channel, civilian frequencies, even the old Earth military emergency band that probably reached no one. She told anyone who would listen what was happening. She described the attacks. She read the names of the dead. At the 11-hour mark, a Kresh transmission broke through. The alien commander appeared on screen, his scaled face split in what might have been a smile. "Human colony, this is Admiral Krasix of the Kresh Dominion. You will surrender immediately. We will take your facilities and your people. Resist, and we will turn your world to glass. You have 1 hour to comply." Sarah looked at the reptilian face and felt cold rage settle over her. "This is Director Chen. I reject your terms. Help is coming." Krasix laughed, a hissing sound. "Help? From your precious council? They debate while we act. From your fellow humans? They abandoned war generations ago. Face reality, human. You are alone." The transmission ended. Sarah sat in the darkened command center and wondered if the Kresh Admiral was right. Maybe no one was coming. Maybe she'd sent her message into an empty void. But somewhere in the back of her mind, her grandfather's voice whispered, "We just chose not to. There's a difference." She kept broadcasting. She kept hoping. And in the cold dark beyond Neptune, 3 shapes moved through impossible space, racing toward Proxima Verde at speeds that would terrify any physicist. They had 8 hours to cross a distance that should take 11 days. They had been sleeping for 73 years. Now they were awake. The emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Commander Marcus Steele hadn't seen that color in this context for 73 years. He stood on the bridge of the EDF Valkyrie and felt like a ghost walking through his own past. "All stations, report status," he ordered. His voice sounded old even to himself. 89 years old. He'd been 16 when he first served on this ship. Now his joints ached and his hands showed age spots, but his mind was sharp. Modern medicine kept people healthy longer, and the military kept calling him back for consultations, asking him to remember how these old systems worked. Today wasn't a consultation. Today was real. "Engineering reporting," came a voice over the comm. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo, 63 years old, pulled from retirement, where she'd been teaching physics. "Reactors are warming up. We're at 40% power. Slipstream drive needs another 6 hours minimum." "Weapons?" Steele asked. "Railgun capacitors charging. Point defense systems initializing. We're cold, Commander. These systems haven't fired in 7 decades. That was Chen Park, former gunnery chief, now 71, and supposed to be enjoying retirement on Mars. Steele looked around his bridge. Every station was manned by someone who should have been drinking tea and playing with grandchildren. Instead, they were here, activating a ship that belonged in a museum. The Valkyrie was 4 kilometers of human engineering from an era most people wanted to forget. When Earth built these dreadnoughts, humanity was still raw from the silicate invasion of 2721. The insectoid silicates had come to strip mine Earth's resources. They had nearly succeeded. Humanity won that war, but barely. The victory was built on desperation, innovation, and weapons designed for one purpose: overwhelming destruction. When it was over, Earth looked at what it had become and felt sick. They'd turned themselves into monsters to fight monsters. Then the Galactic Council made contact. They offered membership, technology, peace. All humanity had to do was abandon their warlike ways. It seemed like a fair trade. Humans were tired of war. But some people, including a young Admiral Kenji Yamamoto, had argued for keeping the weapons. Peace is only real when you choose it, he'd said. Destroy our capacity for war, and we become victims waiting to happen. The compromise was the Mothball Fleet, 47 dreadnoughts, hundreds of smaller vessels, all placed in cold storage beyond Neptune. Maintained, ready, but never used. A sword kept sharp, but sheathed. For 73 years, it worked. Humanity pursued peace. They joined the galaxy. They sent out agricultural colonies like Proxima Verde. The younger generations barely knew the Mothball Fleet existed. Then the emergency signal came. Steele had been in his apartment on Luna when his comm unit screamed with a priority alert he hadn't heard since his military days. The old Earth Defense Force emergency channel, activated for the first time since the peace era began. He'd listened to Sarah Chen's voice, desperate and afraid, calling for help that probably wouldn't come. He'd checked the news feeds. The Galactic Council was debating, always debating. They'd send observers in 6 days, maybe vote on intervention later. His comm rang 5 minutes later. Fleet Admiral Hassan, one of the few active military commanders maintaining the Mothball Fleet. Marcus, we're activating 3 dreadnoughts. I need you on the Valkyrie. We need people who actually know how to run these ships in combat. I'm 89 years old, Steele had said. You're also the last living commander who's actually fired the Valkyrie's main guns in anger. We need you. They need you. Steele had looked out his window at the lunar landscape. How long do we have? The colony has maybe 14 hours before the crash overrun them. We need 8 hours to charge the slipstream drives. Every minute we waste is colonists dying. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Now here he stood, on a bridge that felt both familiar and strange. The ship hummed around him as decades-old systems came back to life. In the engine room, engineers worked frantically to bring reactors to full power. In the weapons bays, gunnery crews calibrated systems that could crack moons. Commander, we're getting status reports from Ragnarok and Yamato, his communications officer reported. They're matching our timeline. All 3 ships will be ready for slipstream in 7 hours, 40 minutes. Not good enough, Steele said. The colony won't last that long. Tell engineering I need slipstream capability in 7 hours. Not 7 hours and 40 minutes. 7 hours. Sir, Lieutenant Okonkwo says the drives need time to... I know what the drives need. I also know Sarah Chen doesn't have time to give. Tell engineering to push it. Throughout the ship, crew members worked with desperate intensity. These were volunteers, every one. When Fleet Admiral Hassan put out the call, thousands applied. Most were rejected as too young, no combat experience. The crew of the Valkyrie averaged 68 years old. They remembered the old ways. In the weapons bay, Chen Park ran diagnostics on the main railgun. The weapon ran the entire length of the ship's spine. A magnetic accelerator capable of launching projectiles at 15% the speed of light. It required enough power to run a small city just to fire once. Capacitors at 60%, reported one of his team. Targeting systems are calibrated. Sir, when was the last time anyone actually fired this thing? Training exercise in 2778, Park replied. 54 years ago. I was there. We put a tungsten slug through an asteroid the size of Manhattan. The asteroid ceased to exist. The younger technician looked nervous. And we might use this on ships with people inside? Park turned to face him. The Kresh are bombing a colony with 47,000 people inside. They've already killed hundreds. Yes, we might use this on ships with people inside. That's war, son. It's ugly. That's why we try not to have them. Down in engineering, Sarah Okonkwo pushed her team to the limit. The Valkyrie's reactors were marvels of engineering. Fusion plants that could power a continent. But they've been cold for decades. Bringing them to full power too quickly risked catastrophic failure. Reactor 3 is running hot, one of her engineers called out. How hot? Approaching safety limits. We need to slow the warm-up sequence. Okonkwo checked her chronometer. They were 30 minutes behind schedule. Every minute was more colonists dead. Keep pushing it. If we breach limits, we'll shut it down then. Until then, we keep accelerating. Ma'am, if a reactor fails in slipstream, we could tear a hole in normal space. If we arrive too late, 47,000 people die. I'll take the risk. Keep pushing. On the bridge, Steele watched the countdown clock. 6 hours until slipstream capability. The tactical display showed the Kresh fleet at Proxima Verde, systematically destroying the colony's infrastructure. Intelligence estimates suggested the colony had maybe 4 more hours before complete collapse. They would be too late. Unless they could shave time off the slipstream charge. Unless the reactors held together. Unless 100 things went right that could easily go wrong. Commander, message from Fleet Admiral Hassan, his comm officer reported. Hassan's face appeared on screen. Marcus, the Council is watching us. They know we're activating ships. They're demanding we stand down, saying this is an unauthorized military action. Are you ordering us to abort? Steele asked. Hassan smiled grimly. I'm ordering you to have communications difficulties and not receive this message for another 8 hours. Give them hell, Marcus. Show them why we kept these ships. The transmission ended. Steele looked at his crew, these old veterans who'd come out of retirement for one more mission. All hands, this is the commander. In approximately 7 hours, we will jump to Proxima Verde. We will arrive to find a Kresh fleet that believes humans are weak, that we've forgotten how to fight. They chose to attack our people because they think we're easy prey. We're going to teach them a lesson about assumptions. We're going to remind the galaxy why Earth built these ships, and we're going to bring our people home. Prepare for slipstream insertion. Around him, the bridge crew worked with renewed intensity. Steele sat in his command chair and felt the ship come alive beneath him. The Valkyrie had been sleeping for 73 years. Now she was waking up angry. Admiral Krasik stood on the command deck of his flagship and watched Proxima Verde burn. This was his 32nd conquest. The process was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force. Destroy any resistance. Make the target population understand their choices. Submit or die. Humans, in his experience, always submitted. They joined the Galactic Council and adopted its peaceful ways enthusiastically. They talked endlessly about diplomacy and cooperation. They dismantled their military and built farms instead. Soft creatures who'd forgotten their teeth. Status of the bombardment? He asked his tactical officer. 70% of surface infrastructure destroyed. Most of the population is underground in shelters. We can dig them out at our convenience. Krasix nodded. The shelters would only delay the inevitable. In a few hours, he'd send down landing parties. The humans would surrender. This colony would become another resource extraction center for the Dominion. The humans would work the mines until they died or proved useful elsewhere. Admiral, we're detecting anomalous readings at the system's edge. Krasix turned. What kind of anomalies? Slipstream exit signatures. 3 of them, very large. The Council observers? Negative, sir. These signatures are massive. Each one reads larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. Krasix felt a flicker of unease. Identify the vessels. The tactical officer worked his console. Transponders are broadcasting human identification codes. But that's impossible. Humans don't have ships larger than 800 meters. These readings suggest vessels over 4 kilometers in length. Display them. The main screen shifted to show long-range scans. 3 enormous shapes hung in the darkness, 2 million kilometers away. Even at this distance, they were clearly massive. The design was unfamiliar, blocky and utilitarian, where most council ships were elegant curves. "What are we looking at?" Krasix demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. The computer is searching archives. Wait, we have a match. These designs correspond to human military vessels from before they joined the Council. Dreadnought-class warships from their war period. But those ships were decommissioned decades ago." Krasix stared at the screen. Human warships? Impossible. Everyone knew humans had abandoned violence. They were farmers and philosophers now, not warriors. "They must be museum pieces," he said. "Ancient relics they've brought out in desperation. Scan for active weapons." "Sir, energy readings are off the scale. Power signatures consistent with multiple fusion reactors at full capacity. Weapon systems appear to be charging." Before Krasix could respond, a transmission came through. A human voice, male, older, with an edge of iron underneath. "Kresh vessels, this is Commander Marcus Steele of the Earth Defense Force. You are firing upon human civilians. You have one opportunity to withdraw. You have 60 seconds to comply." The bridge went silent. Krasix felt his blood chill, then heat with rage. Earth Defense Force? That organization didn't exist anymore. This was a bluff. It had to be. He opened a channel. "Unknown human vessels, this is Admiral Krasix of the Kresh Dominion. This colony is in disputed territory. You have no authority here. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." 50 seconds, came the reply. Krasix slammed his fist on his console. These humans thought they could intimidate him with ancient ships and tough words. He would teach them reality. "Send Destroyer Group Alpha, 30 ships. Disable those relics, and bring me their commanders." They'd fought in dozens of campaigns. Against 3 ships that probably couldn't even maneuver properly, they'd be more than sufficient. The 30 destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the human vessels. Krasix watched on his displays. Distance closing. 1 million kilometers. 800,000. 500,000. 40 seconds, the human voice said. Krasix watched the countdown. At 10 seconds, he would order his destroyers to open fire. These ancient human ships would break apart, and the colonists would see their protectors destroyed. It would break their spirit completely. 10 seconds. 9, 8. At 2 seconds, one of the human ships fired. The tactical display showed a single projectile launching from the lead human vessel. It was moving impossibly fast. 0.15 light speed, according to the sensors. That was absurd. Nothing should accelerate that quickly. The projectile crossed the distance in seconds. It struck the lead destroyer amidships. The destroyer didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment there was a ship. The next, there was an expanding cloud of plasma and debris. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a 50-megaton explosion. 2 nearby destroyers caught in the blast wave tumbled away, hulls cracked and leaking atmosphere. Krasix stared at his display. One shot. One ship erased from existence. "What was that?" he whispered. His tactical officer's voice shook. "Railgun, sir. They fired a solid projectile at relativistic speeds. The kinetic energy alone. I've never seen anything like it." For 5 seconds, nobody moved. The destroyers had stopped their advance, sitting dead in space, as their commanders tried to understand what had just happened. Krasix felt fear. Real fear, for the first time in years. But he was a Kresh admiral. He'd conquered star systems. He wouldn't be frightened by one lucky shot. All ships, attack formation, destroy those human vessels, all weapons free. His fleet moved, 40 ships, each carrying enough firepower to level a city. They opened fire simultaneously. Plasma lances, fusion missiles, particle beams, everything. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. The human ships accelerated forward. Krasix watched in horror as the weapons fire reached the human vessels. The ships were moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. And around them, space came alive with point defense fire. Thousands of small turrets, maybe tens of thousands, created a sphere of defensive fire around each ship. Missiles detonated prematurely, torn apart by precision fire. Energy weapons scattered against armor and some kind of deflector screen. Particle beams simply dissipated. Not one shot touched the human vessels. Impossible. Krasix breathed. Nothing can defend that perfectly. Sir, their point defense network is beyond anything in our database. The processing power alone to track and intercept that many incoming weapons. I don't care about the technical details. Intensify fire. Overwhelm their defenses. But the human ships didn't wait. They counterattacked. The second ship, the one transponder identified as Ragnarok, opened its launch bays. Thousands of small craft poured out. Not fighter craft with pilots inside, but drones. Each one moved with terrifying precision. The drones swarmed through the Kresh formation like a plague. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't need to. Each drone carried enough explosive power to crack a ship's hull. They flew directly into engines, weapon systems, bridge sections. Kresh destroyers started dying in pairs. The third human ship, Yamato, fired its main weapon, a projectile the size of a building, launched from a cannon that ran the entire length of the vessel. It struck a Kresh cruiser dead center. The ship folded in on itself like paper, the kinetic impact creating a brief, bright star where the vessel had been. And Valkyrie, the lead ship, launched missiles. But these weren't ordinary missiles. They moved at incredible speeds, faster than Kresh point defense could track. When they struck, they didn't just explode. They burned. Plasma hotter than the surface of a star washed over Kresh vessels, melting armor, boiling atmosphere, turning proud warships into funeral pyres. Krasix watched his fleet die. 6 ships gone, 10 ships, 15. They'd been fighting for 4 minutes. Sir, we need to withdraw. No, we have numbers. We can overwhelm them. But even as he said it, 3 more of his ships died. The human vessels moved through his formation like they owned the void. Their weapons never stopped firing. Their defenses never failed. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. 20 ships gone. 25. Krasix looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. His ships were designed to fight other council species, civilizations that valued life and fought with restraint. These human ships were designed by people who'd faced extinction and decided to never face it again. Every weapon was built for overwhelming kill power. Every system existed to make the ship survive and the enemy die. These weren't warships, they were extinction events given form. All ships, retreat. Full power to engines. His remaining vessels tried to run, but the human drones were everywhere. The human railguns had impossible range. Ships died trying to escape. 30 ships gone. 35. Krasix ordered his own ship to jump to faster-than-light travel. His crew worked frantically. Around them, the last of his destroyers died. The humans weren't even slowing down. 4 ships made it to FTL, including his flagship. 4 ships out of 40. As Krasix fled through hyperspace, he kept seeing that first shot in his mind. 1 projectile, 1 dead ship. The humans had broadcast a message with that shot. They'd said, "This is what we chose to put away. This is what we could have been doing all along. We chose peace, but we never forgot how to make war." The galaxy had called humans soft. The galaxy had been catastrophically wrong. The silence after the Kresh fleet jumped away was absolute. Commander Marcus Steele stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie and watched the debris field drift past. 40 Kresh ships had attacked them. 36 of those ships now existed only as wreckage and radiation. The battle had lasted 12 minutes. "Status report," Steele ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. He'd fought before, decades ago, but this was different. This wasn't a desperate struggle against the silicates. This was a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. It felt less like war and more like extermination. "Hull integrity at 98%, reported his tactical officer. "Point defense systems performed flawlessly. We took no significant damage. Ragnarok and Yamato report similar status. No significant damage. They'd just destroyed 36 warships, and hadn't even been scratched. Steele felt sick. Open a channel to the colony. A moment later, Director Sarah Chen appeared on screen. She looked exhausted, terrified, hopeful, and shocked, all at once. Behind her, Steele could see her command center, the staff staring at their displays in disbelief. Director Chen, this is Commander Steele. The Kresh fleet has been neutralized. You're safe now. Sarah's face crumpled. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, I didn't think anyone was listening. I didn't think anyone would come. Someone is always listening, Director. We're deploying rescue and medical teams to the surface. Hang on a little longer. The transmission ended. Steele turned to his crew. Take us into standard orbit. Begin deployment of all support craft. I want medical teams, engineers, supply drops, everything. Let's help these people rebuild. As the Valkyrie moved into position, smaller ships began launching from its bays. These weren't weapons of war, but tools of mercy. Medical shuttles, engineering teams, supply craft loaded with food and shelter materials. The ship that had just dealt death now brought life. On the planet below, Sarah Chen watched the sky. The fires were dying down. The bombardment had stopped. Above, she could see ships descending, human ships, coming to help. Around her, her staff began coordinating with the rescue teams. We have 4,000 dead, Sarah said quietly, and thousands more injured. The medical teams are equipped for mass casualties, replied one of the incoming shuttle commanders. We'll start with the critical cases. Director, we're going to get through this. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was watching something else on her monitors. The entire battle had been recorded by Galactic Council observer ships positioned at a safe distance. They'd witness everything. And they were broadcasting it. The footage was already spreading across the galaxy. 300 light-years away, in the Galactic Council chambers, representatives of 200 species watched the recording in stunned silence. They saw the Kresh fleet attack. They saw 3 human ships arrive. They saw what happened next. Ambassador Talora of the Varanthi stood frozen, her compound eyes fixed on the display. She'd argued for intervention to save Proxima Verde. The Council had voted to send observers instead, claiming they needed time to debate the proper response. The humans hadn't debated. They'd acted. And the way they'd acted. Talora watched human weapons erase Kresh ships from existence. She saw point defense systems that made her own species' best technology look primitive. She saw drones swarm like living things. She saw ships move with impossible precision. But what truly shocked her was the efficiency. The human ships didn't waste shots, didn't miss, didn't hesitate. Every weapon fired had a purpose. Every target was eliminated with minimal expenditure of resources. This was the work of people who understood war at a fundamental level. The recording ended. The council chamber remained silent. Then, everyone started talking at once. How many more ships do they have? Did you see the power output on those reactors? Their point defense coverage was total. Nothing touched them. Where have they been hiding this capability? Are we in danger? Council Speaker Malnax, a crystalline being whose species had never known war, raised appendages for silence. Representatives, please. I share your shock. I propose we immediately summon the human ambassador to explain this display. Ambassador Zhang Chen was already on his way. Sarah's grandfather walked into the council chambers with his head high. He was 87 years old, and he'd been Earth's representative to the galaxy for 20 years. In all that time, he'd been patient, diplomatic, and soft-spoken. Today, he looked different. Harder. Ambassador Chen, Speaker Malnax began, the Council demands an explanation. You assured us that humanity had abandoned military development. You told us your warships were dismantled. Yet we've just witnessed 3 vessels of unprecedented power destroy a sizable fleet. Did you lie to us? Zhang looked around the chamber. Every eye, in whatever form each species possessed eyes, was fixed on him. We never lied, he said. We told you we dismantled our war machine. We never said we destroyed it. There's a difference. Semantics, shouted the Kresh representative, his scales flushed with rage and humiliation. You hid weapons of mass destruction. We stored them, Zhang corrected. We built them during a period when our survival was at stake. When we joined the council, we chose peace. But we're not stupid. We kept the capacity to defend ourselves. How many ships? Demanded a Thurian representative. Zhang smiled slightly. 47 dreadnoughts, hundreds of smaller vessels, all maintained and ready for activation if needed. The chamber erupted. Some species shouted in outrage, others in fear. A few nodded in what might have been respect. Zhang waited for quiet. You want to understand humans? Then understand this. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We competed with predators, diseases, each other. We learned to survive by being adaptable, creative, and when necessary, viciously effective at violence. Then you are a threat to galactic peace, the Kresh representative accused. No, Zhang said firmly. We're a threat to those who threaten peace. There's a difference. For 73 years, we've been peaceful members of this council. We've shared technology, culture, friendship. We've never threatened anyone. But when someone attacked our people, our civilians, our children, we responded. Talora stepped forward. Ambassador Chen, many of us are struggling to understand. You seem to embrace peace, yet you maintain such terrible weapons. How do you reconcile this? Zhang turned to her. Most species here achieved peace by evolving beyond violence, or never being particularly violent in the first place. Humans achieved peace by becoming so good at war that we terrified ourselves. We looked at what we were becoming and decided we didn't want to be that anymore. But we never forgot the lessons we learned. And what lessons are those? Talora asked. That peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. It's the choice to restrain that capacity. That the best way to avoid war is to be so prepared for it that no one dares start one. That sometimes the most peaceful people are those who truly understand what war costs. Speaker Malnak spoke again. The Kresh Dominion is demanding the Council condemn your excessive use of force. They say the destruction of their fleet was disproportionate. Zhang's expression hardened. They attacked a civilian colony. They killed 4,000 people, including children. They intended to enslave the survivors. My granddaughter called for help, and the council voted to send observers. Observers, in 6 days. So yes, we used force. Excessive? We used exactly enough force to stop them from killing more of our people. If they want proportionate responses, they shouldn't attack civilians. The Kresh representative started to object, but other species talked over him. The motion to condemn humanity failed. Not just failed, but was rejected by a massive majority. As the session continued, Zhang noticed something interesting. The species that had considered humans soft and weak were now revising their diplomatic approaches. Trade negotiators were suddenly more accommodating. Territorial disputes were being resolved in humanity's favor. It was amazing how quickly attitudes changed when people realized you had the ability to erase their fleets from existence. Back at Proxima Verde, the rescue operations continued. Commander Steele walked through the ruined colony with Director Sarah Chen. Medical teams worked on the wounded. Engineers began repairs. Supply drops brought food and shelter. How many can you save? Sarah asked quietly. Most of them. Maybe not all, but most. The shelters protected the majority of your people. Sarah looked at the sky where the 3 dreadnoughts hung in orbit. I never knew these ships existed. I thought we'd put away war completely. Steele followed her gaze. We tried. We really did try. But there's a saying from old Earth. If you want peace, prepare for war. Your grandfather understood that. Some of us understood that. We kept the swords sharp, even while hoping we'd never need to use them again. And now? Now the galaxy knows. That will change things. Maybe for the better. Maybe species that thought about attacking human colonies will reconsider. Maybe we just bought ourselves another few decades of peace. By demonstrating we can kill efficiently? Steele nodded slowly. Yes, it's not pretty, it's not something to be proud of, but it's reality. Peace isn't free, Director. Someone has to be capable of protecting it. Above them, the Valkyrie's running lights gleamed against the stars. The ship that had brought death and salvation in equal measure. A reminder that humanity had chosen peace, but never forgotten how to make war. And across the galaxy, every species that had thought humans were sheep suddenly realized they might be sheepdogs instead. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 homes, people of every species imaginable watched the footage. 3 human ships, 40 crash vessels, 12 minutes. The mathematics of the battle was simple, but the implications were staggering. On Earth, in the gleaming towers of Geneva, Fleet Admiral Hassan watched the political fallout unfold. His decision to activate the mothball fleet had been made in minutes, but the consequences would last generations. He'd bypassed council protocols, violated peace treaties, and launched a military operation without authorization. He'd also saved 43,000 lives. The calls started immediately. Some were congratulatory, some were furious. The President of Earth wanted a full briefing. The Council wanted explanations. The media wanted interviews. He was watching something else. The military communications channels across Council space. Species were recalculating. Defense budgets were being revised. Trade agreements were being reconsidered. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 73 years. Considered a minor power, pleasant but inconsequential. That assessment was changing rapidly. What interested Hassan most was the silence from certain quarters. The Krix hegemony, which had been making territorial claims near human space, suddenly withdrew their demands. The Zoltar Collective, which had been pressuring human colonies for trade concessions, offered generous new terms. The Venn Consortium quietly settled a decade-long dispute over mining rights in humanity's favor. Fear was a powerful diplomat. Hassan's secure comm chimed. Ambassador Zhang Chen appeared on screen, calling from the council headquarters. The Kresh have demanded reparations for their destroyed fleet, Zhang said without preamble. Hassan raised an eyebrow. They attacked our colony, and they want reparations? They're claiming we used excessive force. They say our response was disproportionate to the threat. What does the council say? Zhang smiled slightly. The motion failed. Badly. Most species seem to feel that when you attack civilians, you accept the consequences. However, we have a larger problem. Which is? Everyone wants to know how many more ships we have. They want inspections of our military capabilities. They want guarantees that we won't use these weapons aggressively. The Council is frightened, Admiral. They're more frightened of us than they are of the Kresh. Hassan leaned back in his chair. What do you recommend? Transparency, to a point. We confirm the existence of the Mothball fleet. We provide basic numbers and capabilities. We make it clear these ships are defensive in nature. And we make it equally clear that what happened at Proxima Verde will happen to anyone who threatens human civilians. Speak softly and show them the big stick? Something like that. The Veranti ambassador to Laura has been helpful. She's arguing that our response, while shocking, was justified. She's also privately suggested that our capabilities might bring stability to the galaxy. Species have been getting aggressive lately because the Council's enforcement mechanisms are weak. Now there's a sheriff in town. Hassan considered this. We didn't sign up to be galactic peacekeepers. No, but we might have become them anyway. The question is what we do with that role. The conversation ended, leaving Hassan with more questions than answers. He pulled up the status reports from the Mothball fleet. The activation of 3 dreadnoughts had gone smoothly, all things considered. But it had taken every qualified volunteer they could find to crew them. If they needed to activate more ships, Where would they find the crews? More importantly, did they want to? The whole point of the peace era was to leave war behind. Now they demonstrated they could still fight, still kill, still destroy. Was that a door they wanted to open further? On Proxima Verde, the reconstruction continued. Commander Marcus Steele supervised the effort from the Valkyrie's bridge. Medical teams reported that casualty numbers were stabilizing. Engineering crews were restoring power to critical systems. The colony would survive. Sarah Chen visited the ship 3 days after the battle. Steele met her in the docking bay as she stepped off the shuttle. She looked around at the massive interior spaces, the gleaming corridors, the efficient crew, moving with purpose. I expected something more military. We have high standards, Steele replied. This ship is 73 years old, but we've maintained it like it was built yesterday. Come, I'll show you the bridge. They walked through the corridors. Sarah noticed the crew members they passed. All older, all veterans, all moving with the confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing. How many people died to create this? She asked quietly. Steele knew she meant the technology, the weapons, the doctrine that made ships like the Valkyrie possible. Millions. The Silicate invasion killed 40 million people before we stopped them. We learned how to build these ships in the fires of desperation. Every system, every weapon, every tactical doctrine was written in blood. And you kept them. Why? Because my generation remembered. We remembered what it felt like to be helpless against an enemy that wanted us extinct. We remembered the people who died because we weren't prepared. When the Council offered peace, we wanted it desperately. But we weren't going to make the same mistake twice. They reached the bridge. Sarah looked at the command chair, the tactical displays, the weapons controls. My grandfather never told me about these ships. He was protecting you. The younger generations were supposed to grow up peaceful. No nightmares about war, no trauma. We'd handle the ugly responsibility of keeping these ships ready, just in case. Just in case turned out to be necessary. It did. 4,000 of your people died before we could arrive. That's 4,000 failures. We weren't fast enough, weren't ready enough. Those deaths are on us. Sarah turned to him. You saved 43,000 lives. Those survivors are thanks to you. He'd learned long ago that in war, you remembered the ones you couldn't save more than the ones you could. As Sarah toured the ship, a different conversation was happening on the Kresh homeworld. Admiral Krasix stood before the Dominion's War Council, explaining how he'd lost 36 ships to 3 human vessels. The council members didn't interrupt. They listened to his report in silence. When he finished, the Supreme Overlord spoke. These humans, we thought they were prey. Yes, Overlord. We were wrong. Yes, Overlord. The intelligence reports said they dismantled their military, that they'd embraced peace. Krasix chose his words carefully. The humans did embrace peace, Overlord, but they never abandoned their capacity for war. They simply chose not to use it, until we forced them to choose otherwise. The Overlord's scales darkened with thought. How many more ships like those do they possess? Our intelligence estimates at least 40 more dreadnoughts, possibly hundreds of smaller vessels, all maintained and ready for deployment. Then the Dominion will avoid human space, mark all human colonies and territories as restricted zones. Any commander who violates this order will be executed. Krasix felt relief wash over him. He'd expected punishment for his failure. Instead, the Dominion was acknowledging reality. The humans weren't prey. They were predators, pretending to be prey. The difference was crucial. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had considered expansion into human space revised their plans. Pirates who targeted human shipping found other prey. Border disputes were quietly settled. The humans had fired their weapons for 12 minutes. The political effects would last for decades. On Earth, in the deep storage facilities beyond Neptune, things were changing. Fleet Admiral Hassan ordered a comprehensive review of the Moth-All fleet. More maintenance crews were recruited. Training programs for potential crew members were expanded. Not because humanity wanted war, but because they'd learned the price of unpreparedness. The Valkyrie, Ragnarok, and Yamato remained on active duty, rotating through human space as a visible reminder. Other colonies requested protection. Some species requested joint exercises, wanting to learn from human tactical doctrine. Ambassador Zhang Chen addressed the Galactic Council one final time on the subject. "Representatives," he said, "you've asked us about our military capabilities. You've expressed concern about our weapons. You want guarantees about our intentions. Let me be absolutely clear. Humanity chose peace 73 years ago. That choice was real and sincere. We integrated into the galactic community. We followed council law. We became what we wanted to be. Peaceful, productive members of a civilized galaxy." He paused, making eye contact with representatives around the chamber. "But we never forgot what we came from. We never forgot that the universe doesn't care about your principles, that there are species who see peace as weakness and compassion as opportunity. So, we kept our swords sharp, not because we wanted to use them, but because we knew that someday, someone would test us. The Kresh tested us. They attacked our civilians, killed our children, and expected us to submit. We didn't. We won't. Ever. That's the guarantee you want. We won't start wars, but we will finish them." The chamber was silent. "You want to know how many ships we have? Enough. You want to know how powerful our weapons are? Sufficient. You want to know our intentions? We intend to live in peace with all species who respect that peace. And we intend to destroy anyone who threatens our people." Zhang sat down. The council didn't vote on any motions that day. There was nothing left to say. Months later, Commander Steele stood in the Valkyrie's observation deck. The ship was returning to storage, its mission complete. Around him, crew members prepared for deactivation procedures. Soon the ship would be cold again, waiting in the darkness. Lieutenant Okonkwo joined him at the window. "Strange feeling, isn't it? Going back to sleep." "It is. Part of me hopes we never wake up again, that we never need to." "And the other part?" Steele smiled slightly. "The other part knows we will, someday. The galaxy is a big place. There will always be someone who mistakes kindness for weakness. And when they do? When they do, we'll be ready. That's the burden we carry. The younger generations get to believe in peace. We remember the cost of maintaining it." The Valkyrie entered the storage facility 3 days later. The reactors were powered down. The weapons were secured. The crew departed, returning to their quiet retirements. The ship settled into its berth, surrounded by dozens of sister vessels. But this time, when the lights went dark, everyone knew the truth. These weren't museum pieces. They weren't relics of a forgotten age. They were sleeping dragons, maintained and ready, waiting patiently for a call that might never come, or might come tomorrow. In the cold darkness beyond Neptune, 47 dreadnoughts waited, silent, patient, ready. And across the galaxy, everyone who'd learned about Proxima Verde remembered the lesson. Humanity had chosen peace. They genuinely, sincerely committed to it. They'd put away their weapons and built farms and families and futures. But they'd never forgotten how to fight. And that made all the difference. On Proxima Verde, Sarah Chen stood at a memorial for the 4,000 dead. The colony was rebuilding. Ships came and went, bringing supplies and new colonists. Life continued. But every night, Sarah looked up at the stars and remembered 3 ships appearing when she'd almost lost hope. She remembered weapons fire that lit up the void. She remembered being saved by people who'd kept faith with a promise made before she was born. Peace was possible, but only because somewhere, in the cold dark, good people kept terrible weapons ready and prayed they'd never need them again. The galaxy had learned this truth at Proxima Verde. Humanity hoped they wouldn't need to teach it again. But if they did, they were ready. They would always be ready.